A new employee refused to do his work, scoffing. I have a degree, so I shouldn't have to do the same tasks as everyone else. When I refused to cover for him, he rolled his eyes and said, You're just jealous that I have more potential than you. The manager stepped in, checked his performance record, and said, Funny, because your potential is about to be tested. In the unemployment line. I've been reading stories here for years. This is the first time I'm posting, and yeah, it's still burned into my brain like it happened yesterday. This started about 3 years ago when I worked at a logistics company based in Seattle, Washington. Not a small startup, but not some huge Fortune 500 either. Around 150 employees at the time, mostly in one building with a satellite terminal in Boise. My job was in operations, where I handled scheduling and routing freight. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was stable, and I was good at it. I'm not the guy with the flashiest degree or resume. I started in the warehouse, worked my way into dispatch, and then into ops over about 6 years. I've seen stuff go wrong in ways you can't imagine: frozen trailers, runaway forklifts, drivers vanishing mid-route, you name it. I learned to stay calm, fix problems fast, and document everything. The company decides to grow. Things started shifting when the company landed a big new client, a retail chain that needed dedicated coast-to-coast service. That meant more work and more hires. Some of us were told we'd get new team members under us and maybe a chance at management if we played our cards right. I didn't mind training someone. I actually liked the idea. Thought maybe I could step back a little and let someone new pick up the slack. Then we got Bradley. I remember the first time I saw him. Everyone else came in on day one wearing polos, jeans, maybe khakis. Bradley showed up looking like he was about to walk into a TED Talk, pinstripe suit, leather briefcase, polished shoes. No eye contact. No smile. No. Hey, I'm new. He walked right over to the team lead and said, Is my office ready? We didn't have offices unless you were management, or HR. All ops sat in the open floor bullpen. So our lead pointed to a desk next to mine and said, That's you? Bradley's mouth curled like he smelled trash. He blinked a few times, then said, Oh. Okay. I thought I'd have a private space. I do have an MBA from Northwestern. Not sure what he expected. Maybe he thought logistics was like an episode of Suits. I just went back to my screen and pretended I didn't hear it. The training phase, if you can call it that. My manager asked me to show him the ropes. Fine. I walked him through the systems, taught him our tracking software, explained driver codes, location zones, fuel surcharge logic, all the basics. He spent the whole time half listening and scrolling on his phone. Kept saying things like, Oh, I used a more advanced system during my grad project. Or, I already understand business models. I just need to see how you guys do things so I can optimize it. We weren't looking for optimization. We were looking for someone to do the job, assign drivers, confirm pickups, deal with late loads, reroute trucks when snow shut down half of I-80. He lasted 2 hours before complaining the software wasn't intuitive, and asked if we had a dashboard view with executive summaries. No, Bradley. We have Excel. That's below my pay grade. I figured he'd learn over time. I gave him some space. We all did. But things got worse. The moment he was expected to do anything outside his made-up idea of high-level work, he'd straight up refuse. Manager, can you take over the dispatch calls this weekend? Bradley, that's not aligned with my skill set. Team lead, can you clear the backlog of location codes in the tracker? Bradley, I think someone with an administrative background should do that. Me, you assigned a load to the wrong state again. It went to Georgia instead of Oregon. Bradley, I was multitasking. You can fix it, right? And I did. Over and over. For weeks. I redid his loads, corrected his entries, reassigned drivers who had been double-booked. It got to the point where I was staying late, every night, just to make sure Bradley's mistakes didn't cost us the contract we just landed. One time he actually routed a refrigerated produce load through Death Valley in July. I had to step in, reroute it at midnight, and call 2 drivers myself because he ignored 3 warning alerts in the system. The moment I snapped. One Wednesday morning we had a crisis. Big clients sent us a change to the shipping schedule. One of their distribution centers had a power outage, and we had to reroute 14 deliveries in the next 2 hours or they'd fine us $1,000 per truck. We were swamped. Phones ringing. Dispatch blowing up. Everyone digging in, even the warehouse crew was jumping on calls. Bradley? He had AirPods in. Watching some motivational video about 10 habits of millionaire minds. Our manager walked up, calm but firm. Bradley, can you help reassign the Southern California loads? He didn't even pause the video. Just looked up and said, I'm focusing on strategic planning today. Manager, I need you to handle these assignments now. Bradley, sorry, this isn't a good use of my potential. I couldn't believe it. I was 3 cups of coffee in, sweating, talking to 4 drivers at once, and this guy was choosing now to prioritize potential? So when my manager looked at me and said, Can you do it? I didn't even flinch. I said, No. I've covered for him for 3 weeks straight. Not today. Bradley turned toward me with that smug look I'd seen too many times. He chuckled and said, You're just jealous. I've got more potential than you'll ever reach. Let that sink in. I've been in the trenches for 6 years, built routes in my sleep, and this clown thought he was above me because of a piece of paper. I stood up, looked him dead in the eye, and said, I'd rather have no potential and do my job than have yours and screw up every hour. Silence. You could hear the dispatch phones ringing in the background. The whole floor froze for a second. Bradley blinked like he wasn't sure I'd actually talked back to him. What happened next? My manager didn't say anything right away. She just walked back into her office. 10 minutes later, she called Bradley in. He stayed in there for a while. I kept working. Reassigned 3 late drivers, rerouted a trailer that blew a tire in Idaho, and cleared an invoice error that had been sitting in Bradley's queue for 4 days. 15 minutes later, Bradley walked out. He wasn't talking. He wasn't holding his phone. He was holding a cardboard box. He didn't make eye contact with anyone. Just grabbed a few things off his desk. One of our interns tried to say goodbye, and he didn't even respond. He walked out of the building like a statue with a haircut. When he was gone, my manager came out and said 5 words that I still think about. I checked his performance record. She didn't have to say anything else. Everyone was acting like it was over. Bradley was gone. My manager had checked his logs, saw the disaster trail he left behind, and finally pulled the trigger. Everyone was relieved. For about 2 days, the office felt calm again. People were laughing. Drivers weren't yelling at us on the phone. I actually went home on time for the first time in a month. Then the emails started. First, one to HR. Then one to the CEO. Then one to our biggest client. From Bradley. Apparently, he didn't leave quietly. He'd been screenshotting internal conversations, saving call logs, and even taking photos of whiteboards in meeting rooms. And now he was claiming he was forced out by a hostile and unqualified team. That was intimidated by his leadership potential. I wish I was joking. He told HR he was targeted, isolated, and retaliated against because he refused to lower his standards. He claimed I personally sabotaged his work to make him look bad. That I refused to train him properly. And created a culture of exclusion. He even tried to say I caused the rerouting issues, and that he caught the mistakes but was too afraid to speak up. But here's the worst part, he CC'd our client. He emailed our $1 million account and said the reason they had so many delays last month was because our team couldn't handle the volume, and we covered it up by firing the only person brave enough to tell the truth. That lit a fire. Suddenly, I was pulled into back-to-back meetings. HR asked for my training logs. The manager who fired him had to give a full breakdown to legal. We had to pull phone recordings, screenshots of his routing mistakes, system logs, everything. It felt like we were being investigated and sued at the same time. The client was pissed. Not because they believed him, but because they were being dragged into office drama. They hated it. Said we were lucky they weren't pulling the contract, and that we had 30 days to prove our operation was stable. We were down a person, and I was working double again. But this time, it wasn't just about cleaning up mistakes. Now it was about protecting the entire team from one guy's ego. Then the twist came. A week later, we got an anonymous tip. Someone from Bradley's old company messaged our manager through LinkedIn. She didn't know the guy. He just said, "You're not the first. We had to deal with him, too. Be careful, he knows how to make it messy." Turns out, this wasn't the first time Bradley pulled something like this. He'd been at 2 companies before us. Both times, he came in acting like he was there to change everything. Both times, he barely lasted 3 months. And both times, when he was finally held accountable, he blamed the team, claimed discrimination, and threatened legal action. He never actually followed through. But he liked burning bridges on the way out, hoping someone would settle quietly just to shut him up. But this time, he messed with the wrong group. Because I document everything. I still had the timestamped notes from the first week I trained him. Still had screenshots of his assignments, the routing mistakes he made, the Slack messages where he refused to help, even one where he said, "You're better at the boring tasks anyway." We gave it all to legal. HR looped in our lawyer. And finally, someone said something I never expected to hear. He may have committed a breach of confidentiality by emailing the client. I didn't know what that meant at first. But the company did. They weren't about to let him drag them through the mud. But here's the thing. While we were trying to shut this down, someone, and I still don't know who, leaked part of the story to a local business news blog. Nothing crazy, just a short article about a disgruntled former employee causing trouble for a mid-sized logistics firm in Seattle. They didn't name names, but it was obvious who it was about. And that's when Bradley snapped. He went on LinkedIn and posted a full essay. 3,000 words. Accusing the company of professional bullying. Calling me out by name, misspelled, but still, and claiming he was preparing a lawsuit. He made it public. Clients saw it. Partners saw it. Even former coworkers from his last job started commenting under it. One of them wrote, "You did this to us too. Stop blaming everyone else." Another replied, "Bradley, you routed a delivery to Hawaii by ground truck. Take the L." It was chaos. And now, instead of just HR and legal, executives were watching. My director had to do damage control with vendors, and our CEO had to send a statement to all major clients explaining the situation. I wasn't scared, but I was exhausted. This was turning into something bigger than I could have imagined. All because one guy refused to do his job and couldn't handle the fallout. But I wasn't done yet. Because if Bradley wanted to go public, then I had a little plan of my own. After Bradley's public meltdown on LinkedIn, things started getting real. People outside our company were paying attention now. My phone blew up with texts from friends in the industry asking, "Hey, is this about your company?" Or, "Is that the guy who thought a dispatch spreadsheet was beneath him?" Our HR team told me to avoid saying anything online. "Let it blow over," they said. But it wasn't blowing over. It was getting louder. Then we got hit with the second twist. Bradley had filed an EOC complaint, the federal kind. He was accusing the company of age discrimination, intellectual discrimination, yep, that's a thing he made up, and creating a hostile work environment for highly educated professionals. He even claimed we joked about his MBA behind his back. We didn't. What we did say was that his MBA didn't teach him how to read a zip code. But it didn't stop there. About a week later, our manager Danielle got an email from a recruiter. Seemed innocent, just one of those random messages that pop up on LinkedIn. Except, the job listing they were hiring for? It was her exact position. At our company. Posted under a fake department name. With the contact email listed as bradleyarconsults@outlook.com. He was trying to recruit her replacement, while pretending to be some consultant. That was when we realized Bradley hadn't accepted he'd been fired. He believed we failed him. That we forced him out. When he was the only one who saw the cracks in the system. The guy built an entire fake company page. Used stock photos. Claimed to be offering logistics reformation services. And was trying to poach our clients and our staff. He'd even reached out to one of our interns, offering her a position in a new, future-focused firm, if she gave him access to our software backend. Thank God she came straight to us. Legal took over fast. Cease and desist letters flew. Lincoln pulled the page down after 2 days. His Outlook email got flagged and shut down. But the damage was already leaking. Then came the third twist. We got a formal complaint from one of our top carriers, a trucking company based in Tacoma. They had worked with us for years. Never had issues. Suddenly, they were saying they received fake load offers from someone claiming to be with Northpoint. Promising double pay, rerouting trucks mid-transit, then ghosting them. 3 drivers had fueled up expecting loads in Chicago that didn't exist. Guess who they traced the emails back to? An alias connected to Bradley's personal website. He was using burner domains to impersonate our logistics team. Sending fake load confirmations to real drivers, trying to make us look incompetent. Or maybe just to screw with us. It worked. For a while. We had to reimburse the fuel costs. Fix the vendor relationships. Resend a ton of paperwork. I stayed 3 nights that week until almost midnight doing damage control. Again. But what Bradley didn't know. We had a digital trail. And a few days later, the IT team struck gold. Someone had accessed the internal system using an old, inactive admin account, one that had been closed after he left. But that account had been reactivated from an external IP in Los Angeles. Why is that weird? Because Bradley had just posted on Instagram, yes, he still had socials open, that he was starting fresh on the West Coast, and tagged a co-working space in LA. We had his IP. We had his location. We had evidence he accessed the system after termination, which, according to our cybersecurity team, meant criminal trespassing into a corporate network. The company lawyer didn't just get involved. He started prepping for litigation. And now the company wasn't just in defense mode. They were ready to go on offense. But here's the part that really got to me. Despite all this, despite the fake job posts, the impersonation, the fake dispatch orders, Bradley still thought he had a future. He started offering consulting sessions online, selling one-on-one, career strategy, calls for $299 per hour. The entire website was full of buzzwords like next-level logistics mastery and corporate leadership through disruption. And on his site? A quote. Sometimes you have to shake the foundation to make the building stronger. That's what I did at North Point. He was turning his firing into a brand. He even posted a 10-minute video titled, Why I Walked Away from Corporate Lies. Walked away? Bro, you were escorted out? And here's where the next twist hit. The last one before everything changed. Someone sent me a file. I don't know who. Maybe someone from his past. Maybe someone from the intern group chat. Doesn't matter. The file contained Bradley's resume. His real resume. The one he submitted to another job recently. It had dates that didn't match up with the one he gave us. It showed he'd worked at a logistics firm in Chicago for 2 years longer than he actually had. We called that company. They said he lasted 4 months before being let go. They didn't even know he was claiming he worked there for 2 years. And now? That meant resume fraud. He lied on his application. He lied to HR. He lied to the execs. He lied to our biggest client. And now, finally, we had everything. With the resume proof in hand, everything clicked into place. Bradley had lied on his application. Not just little exaggerations, actual fraud. Claimed jobs he didn't have. Dates that didn't exist. Roles he never held. He built an entire fake professional life. That meant every drama, every lie, every accusation was built on a foundation of BS. The damage he caused wasn't just annoying, it was deliberate, and the company had receipts to prove it. HR, legal, and the executive team huddled up. They didn't tell me what the plan was. They just told me to be in the conference room at 9 a.m. Thursday. When I walked in, my stomach flipped. Bradley was sitting at the far end of the table. He had that same cocky look, button-up shirt, smug half-smile, hands folded like he was about to negotiate a merger. But behind the arrogance, I could see something was off. A twitch in his jaw. That nervous shifting people do when they're bluffing and about to fold. I wasn't the only one there. Danielle, my manager, the VP of Operations, HR, our legal counsel, and even someone from IT were all seated. The meeting started quiet. The lawyer read a statement. Pointed out the resume discrepancies. Then the fake job posts. Then the LinkedIn rant. Then the impersonation of staff. Then the fake dispatch emails to drivers. One by one, they laid it out. Calm. Clinical. No emotion. Just facts and screenshots. Bradley tried to interrupt. I think this is all being misrepresented. The VP cut him off. We traced the IP. You accessed our systems after termination. That's illegal. You could be facing criminal charges. Silence. Bradley sat back. He looked around like someone might step in and save him. Maybe HR. Maybe Danielle. Maybe even me. No one did. Then the lawyer pushed a printed resume across the table. The one Bradley submitted to us. And right beside it, the real one someone sent me. These were sent to 2 different companies. Care to explain the difference? And right there, it broke. Bradley's voice cracked. His tone shifted. That performative confidence vanished. He mumbled something about how people inflate things all the time. And that he didn't think it mattered since he had the skills. Then, for the first time, he said something real. I needed a win. I couldn't take another rejection. I thought if I got in the door, I could prove I deserved it. Nobody said anything. He looked around again. No one nodded. No one softened. Not even Danielle, who's usually the one to smooth over tension. This wasn't a small mistake. This was manipulation that hurt real people. Then he looked at me. You could have helped me. You knew I was struggling. I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was absurd. I did help you. I covered for your mess for weeks. You thought I was beneath you. You told me I was jealous of your potential. You called me a problem. And now you're crying foul because I didn't save you from yourself? He looked like I slapped him. Danielle leaned forward, her voice low and steady. Bradley, we're preparing legal action. You breached confidentiality. You impersonated staff. You created fake documents. You're not just fired. You're banned from this industry if we follow through. He finally cracked. I was trying to be more than just some loser in a cubicle. I was trying to matter. Danielle didn't blink. Then maybe you should have done the work. The room was still. Bradley stood up, too fast, like he needed to escape. His chair slammed against the wall. No one flinched. He grabbed his coat and stormed out, slamming the glass door so hard it rattled. People outside looked in, wide-eyed. And just like that, he was gone again. But this time, no cardboard box. No smug smirk. Just echoes of a man who built a lie, tried to live inside it, and watched it collapse from the inside out. After that day, things slowly returned to normal. Legal sent him one final notice: cease all contact, remove all online posts, or we press charges. He complied. Took down the LinkedIn rant. Scrubbed his website. Vanished from view. We never heard from him again. But the effects lingered. Danielle took a few weeks to bounce back. She blamed herself for letting him in, for not acting sooner. HR started checking resumes harder, verifying references twice. Trust had been broken, and not just in the hiring system. In people. As for me? I felt angry for a long time. Angry that someone like him could walk in and pretend to be better than the rest of us. Angry that I had to spend months cleaning up someone else's mess. Angry that I almost got blamed. But under all that anger? There was something else. Relief. Relief that I stood my ground. That I didn't let him bully me into silence. That I held the line, even when it would have been easier to let it go and keep the peace. People started treating me differently after that. I wasn't just the guy in the corner who got things done. I was the guy who didn't let a liar ruin the team. A few months later, I was promoted to operations lead. Not because I asked. Because Danielle said. We need someone who sees the red flags early. And actually does something about it. Sometimes I think about Bradley. Wonder if he ever learned anything. Wonder if he found another company to lie to. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. But one thing's certain, if your whole career is built on pretending to be better than everyone around you, eventually, someone's going to call your bluff. And this time, that someone was me.